Hi, welcome to Murf+E Unfiltered, Zero BS Biz Talk. I'm Kathleen Murphy, and I'm here with my co-host, Eliot Grossman. How are you, Eliot?
I'm doing great, Murph. How you doing?
Excellent. I'm doing well. I can't believe that this is show number 30.
Big day.
Episode 30.
Episode 30.
Episode 30.
Yeah, in the
Big
biz
episode.
we say episode 30.
Episode.
Yeah.
It's going to be epic today.
Yeah, I've put a lot of time and effort into writing all this content.
I'm so glad that you did. I was lucky I could just kick back on this one, right?
Yeah, so thank you for doing all of that for 30 episodes, because I know it's a lot.
I have fun doing it. So it was a little challenging picking out, because you gave me this challenge, which was, Kathy, pick out a really solid episode topic that we can have a lot of fun with. Well, no pressure there, right? So I thought, well, all right, I'm going to look through my list and see what I can come up with.
Right.
So this is what I came up with today. We are going to be talking about sustainable authenticity and how it creates winning teams, whether they be sports or work teams. Mm-hmm. And then having people think about, is their team authentic? And we're going to be going back and forth today in terms of all the different circumstances relating to what creates an authentic team, what does authenticity really mean, have we been on one, etc. So we're gonna just launch into this. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, excellent. So the overview for this particular story and show is, consider the team you're on. Would you rate it to be a winning one? Perhaps you joined the team or leading the team, and in either case you joined it because it was a winning team or had the promise to be one. Are you there yet? And if not, why not? So, of course, no one wants to sign up when they're thinking about switching jobs or joining a team, whether it be a sports team or a work team, and say, oh yeah, let me join the last place team, or yes, this on Glassdoor, this company just gets terrible reviews, I want to work there.
Yeah, I want to work there, right.
No one ever said that.
Right.
I can assure you, and you know that too. So in terms of the factor of an authentic team, one of the things that I thought was important to talk about was just authenticity itself, in terms of really the spirit of what is authenticity, and are there people out there that are more authentic than others. And I was thinking about it from the perspective of, when you meet somebody who is authentic, what are some of the characteristics that that person happens to have? And I was thinking that typically they're fairly charismatic, they're obviously personable, they're refreshing to meet, and sometimes they're even unforgettable, all great qualities. And so when you're interviewing, if you happen to come across at least even one person, hopefully the leader on that team, and they're like that, I think you're in pretty good luck. That's a pretty good place to start in terms of netting out whether you're going to be joining a solid team. Now, the other things to think about are, perhaps you work for someone that's authentic. That's great. And those characteristics that I mentioned earlier, if you don't happen to recognize any of those characteristics in that person, then it might be time to maybe look to do something else, find a different team, of course.
Sure.
And then, I would say, if you aren't on an authentic team, as I said, it's probably a good time to start investigating maybe why that's the case. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're not authentic. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror and recognize that when we're blaming others, we're projecting, and maybe it's us that's the problem.
Sure.
But let's just assume that it's not, right? And you're just not on an authentic team. So we're going to talk about that, like in terms of what you can do in that case. And I'm going to ask you this. Have you ever been on an authentic team?
Yeah, so I'll answer it this way.
Okay.
Well, we'll come back to it. So absolutely. So we'll talk about sports down the road here, on the sports side of it,
Excellent. Right?
On the work side of it, I think we've both been on unauthentic, if that's a word. Inauthentic, whatever you want to say, right? You're an English major.
I was.
But on the authentic side, there's nothing like it, right? Those are the days. We all have bad days, but when you're on a real team, authentic team, we all look for guidance from each other, and whether the leader looks to the team for guidance and vice versa, and we all look to the senior players, and even the senior players look to the junior players.
That's right.
That we all can contribute something.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes.
And when we're all working, I know it sounds so cliche, everybody works together, we can be a great team. In my world, the sales world, it's a very individual sport. I have my quota, you have your quota.
Right.
The leader needs to manage to that number.
Yes.
But when you're with an authentic team, not everybody's going to make their number every month, every quarter.
No.
The key is who's willing to step up and wants to help. If I can help you make your number and vice versa, that's when you're with something. And it's special. It's fun to be around. It's fun
really
to go
is.
to grab beers after work, have
It
drinks
is.
after work, and go together
Yes.
and actually like each other.
Yeah.
You don't have to be best friends.
No.
But to actually like each other and care about each other in the work setting
That's right.
kind of makes it a really good thing. I mean, I'm sure. What about you? You've been on.
Well, yeah. So one of the things I was going to talk about is a factor of insecurity in terms of that is typically a reason why someone may not be authentic.
Yes.
And you're going to be probably able to kind of sniff that out and spot that relatively quickly. Most people can sense that and use their emotional intelligence for it. But in contrast to being on a team that is insecure, the contributing elements for being on an authentic team to recognize whether you're on an inauthentic or authentic team is, some of the characteristics that you were just mentioning, such as having respect for the people on the team. You said you don't have to like them, you don't have to be their best friends, but you do have to try to get along with them, or at least attempt to get along with them. And I would also say that in order to do that, you really need to spend some time and invest time with others. I mean, let's face it, I hear people complaining oftentimes about perhaps their colleagues, and I'll ask them generally the question, well, how much time have you taken to have either lunch with them, go out for drinks with them after work, do anything with them other than work?
Sure.
Maybe even just walk around the building like we used to do when we worked together. And usually the answer is, they look down and they say, well, I really haven't done anything like that. And I said, okay, well, could you start to do that? Try, give that a try. That's a good place to try. And I like the fact that you brought up fun. You really need to, enjoy some fun when you're working, whether you're on a team, a sports team, or a work team. There should be an element of fun involved in it. And let's face it, also, when you are on an authentic team, typically the work that you're doing is rather exceptional. And that translates into doing exceptional work for one another as a team, but for the people that you're working, for, whether it's a client, right? And I'm sure that you've got some kind of examples of maybe a time when you weren't on an authentic team, and what did you have to do to rebuild that
so
team?
Absolutely. So when you sent over the script, and I read that question, that's the one that made me think.
Yes.
Right? The other stuff's easy. The other questions we talk about, that's easy.
This is hard to do.
That question, it was a hard one. It made me think, and I certainly went back, and I'm like, oh gosh. And it starts at the top.
Yes.
Right? So what is that? A misery loves company. And so when your leader is insecure and worried about whether me or my teammates, right? Because I always consider us a team.
Right.
Our teammates are going to take your job.
Yes.
That insecurity is really, really challenging, and that kind of works its way down. It's the trickle-down effect. And with it, the other folks on the team, nobody wants to help each other. Nobody wants to work together.
No.
And we all have these insecure feelings. Oh, my God, are they going to get fired today?
Yes.
We got another team meeting. He
It's the
wants to
worst
see me in his
feeling.
office.
Right.
Or she wants to see me in the office. Terrible, terrible feelings because the leader had kind of bred that into the group, right?
And that's the right word. It definitely is a breeding ground when there's that insecurity element, and everybody feels it. You feel this enormous negative pressure going on.
It's funny because when you interview, say you're going into this team,
Sure.
and you interview. Well, you interview with the manager, and the manager oftentimes says to one of the leaders on the team, hey, I want you to talk to Eliot to give him a lay of the land.
Sure.
Say good things. Be good. So they put on an act, a facade.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And then you get there, and the first week's always good because what do? They take us out to lunch.
Right.
We
It's a great
go
week.
have fun. It's all, gumdrops and rainbows.
That's right.
And then reality sets in.
Right.
And when reality sets in, you're like, wow. I don't need to mention names, but you and I worked together with a person that was extremely insecure about the situation.
Yes.
Right? Those are the folks that try to believe they know it all.
Yes.
And when they don't, the insecurity steps up, and that's where they become a problem. And that problem quickly trickles down.
That's very true.
And that's where you have a losing team. And it's nothing. I mean, I know you've been on one. We're at our age in our career where we've been there. Tell me about that.
It's kind of funny. So I joined a team, and it was exactly what you just described. And it was set up to just look absolutely phenomenal, almost too good to be true. And I thought, all right, this is a red flag here. What am I getting into?
Right.
So yes, week one, marvelous, just, dancing on the clouds. It's
Sure.
just pure happiness. Mm-hmm. Week two, start to meet people on the team that I was managing, and starting to peel back the layers of the onion to see what I have now that I'm working with. And I remember, I'll never forget this, and my boss says to me, week two, there are a couple of people on the team that I've been waiting for you to arrive so that you can evaluate them, but I'm recommending that you probably need to fire them. So I thought, wow, oh, thank you very much
Right.
for that
Sure.
gift that I'm going to be giving to these people potentially
Right.
less than a month into my job here. So lo and behold, one of the things that I discovered, that there was a very low trust level on the team, as you might imagine, and there was this gut feeling that I personally had that these people that had been hired, that were now on my team that I had to manage, they may not have been the best selected candidates for the role. Or maybe at some point the role shifted. They were brought in for another reason, and then they were given new responsibilities, and the alignment was way off. So maybe not their fault, but now they're in this job expecting to be performing at a completely different level, doing something maybe entirely different.
Sure.
And what do you expect is going to happen? They're going to be failing all over the place.
Of course.
And in this team also, they didn't believe in one another, and we had enormously high numbers to hit. I mean, we were on this insane trajectory in terms of what we needed to accomplish.
So let me just jump in quick.
Sure.
And what the problem with those teams,
Yes.
you could have the most talented, intelligent people,
Yes.
but when it starts at the top,
Yes.
leaders, trickle-down effect, there's no way to win, and that's a problem. That's really sad, actually.
It inevitably resulted in that being exactly the case. Spoiler alert.
Group
right?
fell apart, team fell apart.
Well, I did whatever I could to keep the team together. I ended up having to ask those two people to leave the team, brought in new people. So, but what I was initially seeing was that everyone was working in silos. No one was working together, which is a huge problem.
Yep.
And going back to the trust, it didn't exist. So I needed to develop that and redevelop it. So I'll talk a little bit about what I did to rebuild that team.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that as well.
But I did rebuild that team. But I have some tips that people can factor in terms of if they're thinking about this now, in terms of like, well, if I'm a leader and yes, I'm in this circumstance, okay, what do you have for me? Or if I'm on a team that seems like it's suspect, or if I'm thinking about joining a team, what are some of the signs that I can look for?
Yep.
So these are some of the tips that I have. And using the puzzle analogy, if you will, each team member must fit together perfectly. I mean, we know that there's no such thing as being perfect, of course, but the person should have at least the outer appearance to make it look like they're going to be able to join the team and hopefully be aligned into a role that's suitable for them to set them up for success, of course. And then the first impression that you have, and we learn this much earlier on in our life, and it is independent of working or being on a sports team, but we need to really trust our gut instinct in terms of what that first impression is that we make or that someone makes with us or vice versa. And if we don't follow it, we can get ourselves into trouble. The rule that I apply typically when I'm in a situation where I'm the leader of the team and I'm interviewing somebody to join the team, I will resort to the 2% rule. So I'll leave 2% for if there's one person on the team that thinks for whatever reason that person shouldn't join the team, they get to basically state their reasons why.
Okay.
And then, but I really like to have, if at all possible, general consensus, because we're going to have to work together. So if somebody doesn't feel that somebody's right for the team, there's generally some merit to that, and taking that into consideration is really important.
Sure.
So what are some of the other tips that you might suggest to people that are, in the situation of rebuilding a team, leading an inauthentic team,
Sure.
or maybe joining a team, and then how to suss out, oh my gosh, is this an authentic team or not?
Yeah. So
What about this leader?
So I
character?
think in my management career, I actually felt where I was, what's the word I'm looking for? Where I felt most complete, most successful was rebuilding. Right? So whether it's the last place team, and I'm using that, within a group, and they say, oh man, you got stuck with a crappy team, you're leading that team or that
team,
group.
right.
For me, it was fairly simple. You can't go in and rush to judgment.
No.
Right? You got to evaluate.
You do. It takes time.
So for that manager, vice president to say to you, you're going to have to fire somebody, is really not fair, because leading the witness is a challenge.
That's right.
Where you're an adult, you got hired for a reason. Let me do my job.
That's correct.
Let me evaluate.
Precisely.
So when you go in and evaluate, I think for me, whether it takes a couple weeks or a month, whatever, it's not going to make or break the company.
No.
So to be able to go in there and rebuild, it doesn't take long if you're fairly good at what you do, and if you think you're a good judge of character, personality, people, to see the team. Again, for lack of a better term, you got to cut the head of the snake, and whether it's the leading revenue generator on the team, and you're having conversations, and you don't just bring them in and fire them, but you've had conversations, and you see shortly thereafter nothing's going to change.
Right.
You cut the head of a snake, and what you might see is other members of your team actually exhale.
Exactly. Oh, I've
and
seen
say,
that many a time. Yes,
man,
thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you
Without
for
saying
doing
thank
that.
you.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
And let's go. And so
the team dynamics shift enormously.
Enormously.
In a positive
so
way.
then all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe you got rid of an A player,
Right.
but you have an opportunity to bring in another B player, and now you've got 8 B players on your team. You're okay.
Right.
You're going to be just fine.
Right.
Because they want to strive now to be that leader.
That's
they
right.
want to all work together, right?
That's right.
What is something about all hands on ship, or
All hands on deck.
whatever. I don't know.
Something like that.
So
One
I
of
think
those.
that for me is the most enjoyable part of being a leader. No one likes to fire anybody.
No,
It's awful.
no,
But
it's
if it's
the
at the
worst,
expense of building your team to be authentic rather than deal with insecurities,
Right.
It's a win. It's
It
going to
is.
be a win 95% of the time.
I agree. Well, I have some more tips to share with everybody and you as well. So one of the things that I tell people is they need to have some kind of a method when they're going about the hiring process to figure out what people's innate talents are, and beyond the talents they're bringing to the work role or the sports position on their team. And my go-to method is using the Gallup-Clifton Strengths Finder survey assessment to determine what people's top 5 strengths are, because it's one of the methods that I've been using for the last decade that has just been 100% accurate, and it's uncanny how great. And,
Well, I was going to ask you
firsthand.
about why and how and how beneficial it's been to be a Gallup coach.
We're gonna get there, but
Right.
I really recommend the Gallup-Clifton Strengths Finder survey assessment as one of the sort of baseline things that people can leverage. Once they've hired the person, to kind of figure out, it's not recommended for use prior to somebody coming on board. As an assessment. Some companies do use it, but it's not necessarily fully recommended to do that. And then I also would recommend that you create opportunities for the team to authentically bond. So if you're the leader of the team especially, make that happen. And when you provide this structure to support this, you'll find that the teams are more focused and they're happier, and your retention levels and performance metrics will soar in the direction that you're looking for them to go. So we talked a little bit about the fact that you've been on, both inauthentic teams and authentic teams, and let's talk a little bit about the concept of the sports teams.
Yeah.
And let's go there for a few minutes.
Yeah, let's do
in
it.
terms of the dynamics, and is it different in terms of having an authentic sports team or an inauthentic sports team in terms of comparing it to a work team?
Yeah, so when I read that question, I also made me think a little bit, and it made me think about if you've ever watched the movie Hoosiers.
Yes,
Right,
love that
Gene
movie.
Hackman was
Yes,
a coach, and he
great
goes
movie.
into this town, and in Indiana, and
Yes.
Indiana's basketball USA, and he basically cut the head of the snake when he told guys, "Get out of the gym. This is my team," and all the parents and the people around town used to go to practice and the games, and it made me start to think about that. And the best player on the team wasn't playing.
Right.
The best player in the town.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
Jimmy Chitwood wasn't playing. I think that's his name. And what was interesting is he eventually ended up playing, but when he came on board, the coach had already developed the team.
Yes.
Based on they cut the head of the snake, and then they went back to basics, and they went back to passing the ball 5 times before you shoot and things like that. And guys didn't want to do that.
No.
Right. And I thought about that, and I thought it made me think about college basketball team, junior college team that I coached in Boston. And it was the same way. We had players that could have played Division I basketball. But it was about them, right? The name on the back of the jersey instead of the front of the jersey.
That's right.
And eventually, me and my friend that I coached with were able to get rid of 1 or 2 of the guys. And the other guys in the team were not role players, they were good players. And what happened was, again, they exhaled and they wanted to play together because they liked each other.
Right, right.
And they worked hard for each other.
Yeah.
And that for me was, I've coached a lot of different teams in my career, work and sports. That was one of the best times that I've ever had. And we didn't win the championship. We were probably a 500 team, but it didn't matter.
Exactly.
The guys loved it. It was just great. What about you? You've been on sports teams or?
I've been on sports teams that I have to say I was really fortunate that I did not necessarily have an inauthentic team, but I saw plenty of inauthentic teams that my 3 kids played on. One in particular for my daughter, let's just say, without going into too many details.
Yeah.
And it was really painful to watch. It was extremely painful to watch. But let me circle back to, you had asked me the question in terms of why do I go about using the Gallup Strengths Finder to help me with teams? And I would say there are 4 main things. It provides a new and clear insight into a person's top talents. It also gives them a language to be able to express to you and others on their team in terms of what they're good at so that others know what they can contribute, which is enormously helpful.
Absolutely.
Number 3 would be your alignment of the person's talent on that team can be just spot on. And I'm talking both sports teams as well as the workplace team, because there are aspects to somebody's talents that are unrelated to the physical thing that they're doing in sports or the mental thing that they might be doing at work, if you will.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the collaboration and motivation of the team is significantly enhanced when you get this right. I mean, I've seen this time and time again. And I would say that when you apply the Gallup Strengths Finder, people feel appreciated. And you may not know these facts, but statistically, one of the number 1 reasons why people leave a team, a sports or work team, is because they don't feel appreciated. And then the other number 1 reason is that they do stay if they do feel appreciated. That's the number 1 reason why they stay, which just
makes sense,
phenomenal, right? Exactly.
Common
exactly.
sense.
So we've wrapped up, I think, just about everything that we could cover.
Are you kidding me?
I know I know there's actually a lot more that we could cover today.
Oh, that's
but
crazy how fast that went.
I know. Well, hopefully then it's because I picked a good topic
picked
that
a
you
great
enjoyed.
topic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today and ask you to tune back in to many other shows as we bring you fascinating topics for us to talk about. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks, Eliot.
Thanks, Murf.